This is Stephanie. It is officially 36 degrees outside Celsius, which is 96.8. It's remarkably dry though. Normally it's very, very humid here, but for some reason it's very dry today. So I was able to walk around a little bit, but I'm done. It's 5 o'clock in the evening. It's 5 o'clock? Wow, it's 5 o'clock and I've somehow lasted today. Probably because most of that time was spent inside a coffee shop. So I want to finally give explicit tips for the HSK test, or for studying for the HSK test. Ready? Here we go. Now these tips are mostly meant for folks who are taking their first low level, like 1 or 2, HSK 1 or HSK 2 test. If you are a high level learner or user of the language, it's probably not going to apply to you, but who knows, it might. Let me know. If you listen to any of this and some of it seems like gems and it really helped you, then please let me know. This is a little bit of green tea with about as much ice as the thing could hold because it's, again, 36 degrees outside. First thing, get the course book and the workbook. Let me show you. Okay, so here's standard course HSK 3. I'm starting 3 in a few weeks because I will have taken HSK 2, so I have to get this now because I'm running out of flashcards to add to my Lightner box. And at the back of each of these books is the primary vocabulary that they consider you should know for that level. And I don't know if you can see this. It's very bright outside. But this one has, I haven't counted this one, I just got it yesterday. But this is the series I've been using. And I tried a different series and I have since thrown it away. So I can't even tell you which ones not to buy. All I can tell you is, wow! When I used this standard course book for HSK 1, it really, really helped with preparing for the test. Both with vocabulary and grammar, and especially the listening. Oh my gosh, the listening was so easy in the test compared to the book. And I'd rather have the practice be harder than the actual real thing. So yeah, I strongly recommend the book. This is the course book. The course book is darker, the workbook is white. I haven't gotten the workbook for HSK 3 yet, because I don't need it for another month. But I got the course book because I need to start making flashcards of the vocabulary. So for me, now here's my second bit of advice, how you use the course book and the workbook. The course book, as you would imagine with most language learning textbooks, has some stuff for you to learn, some matching stuff. They have vocabulary breakouts, and they have explanations of things, and they have the things that I hate but do read anyway, explanations of grammar items. I personally don't work well with starting with the course book. I work well starting with the workbook, getting confused, getting myself all frustrated and curious, and then trying to figure it out on my own, and then a little while later looking at the course book and seeing if I can find any of the answers there. That works for me. I'm a very different type of language learner, or a very different type of learner than a lot of folks. So if you are someone who has not been successful at learning a language before, or not been successful at learning Chinese, try this approach. Go backwards, start with the workbook, and then use the course book as a reference. See if that works. It's working much better for me. And there's still a lot of things in the course book that I don't understand yet, but I have review of the different chapters built into my studying for the test. And actually I'm going to start pulling in, I'm in the middle of HSK 2 books right now because I'm taking the test in 3 weeks, and I have review for the beginning of HSK 2 books. There's 15 chapters. Every week I have new chapters, and I have review chapters from the beginning of the book. I also am going to be pulling in HSK 1 chapters to review that as well. So every week I should have new chapters, review chapters from that same level, and review chapters from a previous level. And this seems to be working so far for me, so I'm going to keep going because I don't absorb everything the first time. I really need to make questions and to get frustrated and then to go back, and eventually things will penetrate my brain. I have a very stubborn brain. So this revisiting of the material seems to be working really well for me. Now, I have a confession that I've started to make a few times about the course book in these videos that I haven't actually made full on yet. And here you go. For HSK 1, despite the fact that I had seen the course books and the workbooks in bookstores in China a number of times, I bought the workbook and I was working so hard on the workbook that I didn't actually remember that there was a course book, and I didn't use it at all. For HSK 1, I used just the workbook. Did that hurt me? I don't know. Let's see, today's the 15th and next Tuesday is when I get my results, so I'll let you know. I feel like I was very prepared for the test. Very, very prepared. And in looking at the course book for HSK 2, because this time I did decide to get both, and I'm using it in that reverse sort of fashion where I'm doing the workbook, then using the course book as a reference. And I feel like at first I thought I wouldn't use the course book a lot, and now I do find I'm looking at it, but I'm not studying it. I'm not trying to understand it. Again, I'm looking for questions I have, and if the answers are there, then I'm reading those sections, and if it's not, I'm going to return to it later, and hopefully it'll answer questions then. Who knows when different parts of the language will register with my brain. So I didn't even use the course book for HSK 1. However, there's still some holes in the stuff. No, not holes. I think there's still things from the HSK 1 grammar and grammatical structures, especially the questions and question order, that I feel they might have explained in the course books. So last week I went and I bought the HSK 1 course book. I can't show it to you because I've already torn it into chapters, and I'm going to incorporate 1 or 2 chapters of those, probably more than that, because HSK 1's they're very small chapters. It's the beginning level, so it's very, very small. So maybe I'll do like 3 or 4 of those chapters a week as a review to see what things they explained that would help with the things that I still don't understand for HSK 1. So I have no regrets for not using the course book. I just think it's really funny that I just, did the entire test, I think, well, again, we'll find out next Tuesday, without the course book at all. If you are someone, and I've had plenty of students when I was a language teacher who were like this, who needed to see the grammar boxes, who needed to see the explanations before they could use the language. If you are that person, I would certainly use the course book first, then go and do the exercises in the workbook. So I would definitely get both of these if you're studying for the HSK test, and go in either course. If you are someone who prefers to be challenged and get frustrated and then look for answers, then go workbook, course book. If you're someone who needs the structure first and the explanation first and then to do the practice, then go course book, workbook. So I really think that some people think if they can't use the materials the way they're generally used, that they just give up and stop studying the language. And I think if there's one thing, the CELTA teaching English course for adults that is by far the best training that I got on teaching anything at any point. It was meant for teaching language to adults, but I swear I have used those language teaching and language learning tips more than anything else in my entire life. And one thing that taught me is that just because the material exists and the instructions are there doesn't mean you really need to use the materials in the way that they were written. Use the materials in a way that makes sense for you. And I'm a big fan of Ollie Richards, and he does entire podcasts on I Can Teach You a Language podcast. He does entire podcasts where he describes how to play with the materials and use it in a way that works for you. So don't feel like you have to do exactly with the workbook and the course book what they say in the instructions. Use it in a way that works for you. And yeah, but definitely the vocabulary in HSK 1, the vocabulary at the back of the book in HSK 1 and HSK 2, those are really, really good. Advice number 3. Advice number 3 is, personally, I found it easier in HSK 1 when my vocabulary acquisition was ahead of the chapters. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, I started vocabulary for about a month and a half before I even started using the workbook, completely accidentally. And then I started doing the exercises in the workbook. And because my vocabulary, I was maybe halfway or more than halfway through with the 150 words, it was really easy to do at least the reading part because I could identify, even just in the Hansa characters, I could identify the language. So it was more, I could focus more on the sentence order, which is something that trips me up a little bit, is the word order. And I could focus on those things that were hard for me while still feeling a confidence boost from recognizing the language itself, the words themselves. So I would say I would start however you learn a language, however you learn words, the words in HSK. Again, for level 1, HSK 1, it's 150 words. HSK 2, it's 300, but 150 of those are from HSK 1, so it's 150 more. In HSK 3, I think it's double that, because that's 300, and I think it's 600. So there's a big jump from 2 to 3. But I definitely think if you have the time, and do have the time, this stuff is not easy. I would start with the vocabulary and learn the vocabulary however way you can, and then start the course book and the workbook, or the workbook and the course book, depending on how you do it. Now, that brings up a good point. What if you're someone who thrives on learning vocabulary through context? Then you probably want to ignore advice number 3 and just start that and learn your vocabulary by just keep hitting those chapters and learning it that way. The listening in HSK 1 and 2, I know it's probably slower speed for language learners, but as a language learner who has never been good at listening practice in another language, my strengths have always been reading. It's really, really difficult and fast for me. So if you're like me and your strengths are more in the visual of another language than in the auditory, then you probably want to start your listening soon after you start your vocabulary. If you're curious about how I study my vocabulary, I've tried a number of different things, digital and otherwise, and right now I've settled on a paper Lightner box with full-on flashcards. I have tons of videos. Go ahead and take a look at the videos. I have tons of videos about Lightner boxes. It's not my method. I've just used it, abused it, and adapted it a bit. Okay, the next thing is to give yourself, so what is this, number 4? Advice number 4, number 5. The next piece of advice is to give yourself time. It looks like, because the vocabulary only doubles from 150 to 300 from HSK 1 to HSK 3, it looks like there isn't that big of a jump. Holy cow! But the listening and the complexity of the sentences is a much bigger jump than you would think from level 1 to level 2. So I would definitely give yourself some time. They have, in the beginning of the course books, they have a list of suggested time. I think each level is supposed to be an academic semester. Now, if you're studying, I'm assuming that you're studying solo and you're not studying in a class, because if you're studying in a class, you don't have to make these decisions. They're pretty much made for you by the teacher or organization. So if you're studying by yourself, then I would take that time for what is considered a semester of studying in and outside of a classroom, because you're expected to study a certain amount outside of a classroom, and I would take that into your weekly and monthly scheduling and do it that way. Right now, because I scheduled mine too close together, my HSK 1 and HSK 2 tests way too close together, I'm having to scramble and do some weeks 2 chapters from the book, from the workbook, well, workbook and course book, but 2 chapters of new and 2 chapters of review, and some weeks 3 chapters of new and 2 chapters of review. And this is far too much for my brain to absorb, in addition to the vocabulary that I'm doing, which is in the practice materials, in the course book and workbook. It's way too much. It's way, way too much. But I've already rescheduled the test once, and there's a fine each time, and I find it very challenging to work with the company that I'm taking it through. So I'm just going to take it, and then from HSK 2 to HSK 3, I'm going to give myself an extended period of time so I can do 1 chapter of HSK 3 a few chapters of HSK2 review and a few chapters of HSK1 review. I really want to spend more time going deeper into what I've learned after the HSK2 test. Now, do I regret having rushed through 1 and 2? Well, I didn't rush through 1. I was very prepared for 1. And I had plenty of time for 1. Do I feel regret in having rushed 2? Not really, because to be quite honest with you, without an external goal, I do tend to get very lazy. It's part of why I'm making these videos, is that it keeps me accountable, because I have to tell you all the time, hey, how am I doing? How's it going? What am I doing? What are my thoughts on what I'm doing? In order to have epiphanies and triumphs and challenges, I need to actually study. So it keeps me motivated. And yeah, so in a sick way, squishing 1 and 2, more specifically, squishing 2 into 6 weeks of study has been challenging. And I think in the end, it's okay that I've done that for 2, but I will never do that for any of the future levels. I don't know how high up I'm going to go. I think after 3, I have to sit down and reassess, do I have the vocabulary and the basic structures I need to read and learn from authentic materials reading, or do I need to continue on to 4? I don't think I'll do 5 and 6. There's full-on essays in there where you have to write, and I don't really foresee myself doing that in the language in the future. But you never know. HSK3 test I'll take at the end of the year, and anything can happen from now till the end of the year. So there's a lot that can happen. I know I'm definitely taking 1, 2, and 3. So what other advice do I have? If you don't want to take HSK1, take it anyway, so you can get a feel for the test environment. I don't know how much it costs outside of China. Where I took it in Shanghai, I think it was 150 kwai, which was getting my currency thing up. Oh, you want to be difficult, eh? So 150. I want to say it's like $25. It's 150 local currency, which is about $23. The HSK2 test, and I took the paper-based, mostly because the place I signed up with just didn't seem to want to register me for the computer-based. I picked it more by the location than I did by their facilities, but it's a language test. I need to go there 3 times this year. So I didn't want to spend that much time shopping around for a place to take the test, to be honest with you. So I picked a location that was easy to get to, more than the facilities themselves. And I'm pretty happy with how the outward structure of how the test went. They seemed professional. They were very clear when we were there, and that kind of thing. So, okay, so HSK2 was 250 kwai. And, kwai is the local, like, bucks for US dollars, for Chinese yuan, renminbi. There's so many different names for this currency. It's about $40. So it's really not expensive at all to take it, and although you might think now, oh, I won't be nervous. Why would I be nervous? You will be. I can almost guarantee you will be. I have absolutely no stakes in taking this test, and I was nervous. You can watch the video of me being nervous right before the test. And there's something about tests that makes people nervous. It's just a completely natural thing. And I had all these questions right before the test about the test environment that hadn't occurred to me to ask before then. So it's good to, if you feel like you want to skip over 1 and just take 2 and then maybe 3 and then go up from there, take HSK1 anyway, just so you can get the test environment questions taken care of, assuming that you're going to take the test in the same place. The next thing is, if you're studying by yourself, which I have been, at any point when you're using the materials, ask people for help. I've got tentacles all over the internet asking folks for help when I've had questions on things. I haven't actually used online tutors that much yet, but I have a feeling when I get to 3 and I go at a slower pace and I review more and I get to spend more time with the questions that I have, which are many, I'm going to sit down and write lists of questions and start doing one-on-one tutoring online again. I really liked when I did it with italki before, but then I dove into massive vocabulary dump, and it didn't feel like I needed a tutor yet, but I'm getting to the point where I could see conversations and explanations from people versus from the course book being more fruitful for me. So don't be afraid to use people, even though you're studying at home or you're studying wherever by yourself. Don't be afraid to use people to supplement the books. The books will get you ready. They just will. But depending on what you want to use the language for, you might want a deeper understanding of what you're doing, and reach out. There's a huge language learning community for learning Chinese, and they'd be more than happy to help you out with that. A paid and unpaid community of language learning folks for learning Chinese. So those are my top tips for taking the HSK 1 or 2 test, or possibly 3. I don't know. I haven't taken 3. 3's at the end of the year. So I hope these have been helpful at all. If you have taken the test and you have some tips that you feel that I missed or that you'd like to add, please leave them in the comment section below. If you have any questions on the test, again, I took mine in Shanghai, China, so the test setup itself might be a little bit different, but the test should be the same, right? So I will answer them in the best way that I can. I still don't know my test results from HSK1. Despite it being a Scantron test, it's taking them a month to get the results. I don't understand, but I don't need to. What I do know is that next Tuesday is when I will find out my results. So stay tuned, because trust me, if it's anything better than awful, I'm going to be dancing around in a video celebrating the fact that I didn't mess it up, even though I did a lot of creative things in my self-study of the Chinese language. I hope this video has been helpful. If you like it, you know the deal. Also, feel free to subscribe, ask me anything related to Chinese or about China. I have lived here for about 1.5 years. So I'm not doing China culture videos because there are so many stinking people doing really great jobs of that. So if you want some recommendations, feel free to ask me that too, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Sachian.